Hello everyone, welcome to my James Bond reflection video on Roger Moore. And if you're wondering, no, I am not recorded this on the same day as the previous one. I'm just wearing the same shirt, just because I can. So, as usual, Jack McCullough will be popping in to give his thoughts on Roger Moore, who is Jack's favourite Bond, so that should be good for him. Anyway, this video has been long overdue, so let's just get to it. So, Roger Moore, the guy on the end of the box set there, probably the oldest actor to have been cast in the role and the longest serving Bond. He spanned over 7 films of the official series, you know, from Live and Let Die all the way to A View to a Kill. This guy's been Bond for a while, and when he was cast, he had a lot to live up to, let's face it. I mean, after the great Sean Connery, who sadly left the previous film, he left in You Only Live Twice, and then he left again in Diamonds Are Forever. Obviously, we also had George Lazenby on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So, one great Bond, one crappy Bond. Roger Moore could have gone either way, and to be quite frank, he was great. I mean, I think Roger Moore, some people don't really like him, but I think Roger Moore was the most English of them all. Sorry, I was looking down because I had to take my shoes off. I've just been out. So yeah, as I said, Roger Moore, he's the most English of them all. He's the most sort of like posh English gentleman. Let me just turn my fan on. Oh, that's better. Anyway, so yeah, and you could really tell from the beginning of Live and Let Die that he was a ladies' man. Let's face it. I mean, the first time we're introduced to Roger Moore is during a sex scene in Live and Let Die, which is kind of interesting in a way. And you know, I don't think his one-liners are as bad as people say. Like, you know, sheer magnetism, darling. You know, for his first film, he looks young and dandy, and he's fighting fit. You know, Live and Let Die itself is a very unique film of the series. It's very diverse. It's very voodoo-y. It's got the kind of voodoo feel. And when Roger Moore acts with the guy that plays Kananga, I can't remember his name, their scenes are brilliant. And you know, Roger Moore, he has moments when he can fight, but he's just kind of like, he's more of the sort of, you know, sort of jokey Bond. He's kind of like, you know, yeah, like I said, the ladies' man. He's kind of suave, and he does have his moments where he's tough, but he doesn't have sort of like the brooding kind of grittiness of Daniel Craig or Timothy Dalton or even Sean Connery. And Roger Moore fights, he goes for it, but he doesn't necessarily really throw himself in there. Which isn't a bad thing in a way, because it's good to have his own style, and I think that his style really works. I mean, his first 3 films are easily his best. His performance is pretty much consistent throughout the 7 films, but Live and Let Die was really the one to establish new Bond, new era. And it was a great film as well in itself, and Moore was fortunate enough to be cast as Bond in one of the best films of the franchise, in my opinion. Yeah, then The Man with the Golden Gun, not everyone liked it. I did really like it. I thought it was great. I mean, you can tell that Moore was sort of slowly getting into the role more. That duel at the end with Scaramanga, played brilliantly by Sir Christopher Lee, is a fantastic moment, because you see, like, when they're walking, you see Moore. That's probably one of his most intense moments, and the scene where he sort of interrogates Andrea, he's very intense. Like, it was definitely the one that one of the ones where Moore really found an intensity within the role. He wasn't necessarily as, you know, gritty or hard as the others. He wasn't necessarily hard. He was just sort of intense. Like, he really threw himself in those scenes, and he really kind of portrayed this sort of, this man who would, you know, his life is on the line, and he's not determined to give up until he finds out what is going on. Hence, you know, the interrogation. Yeah, I think the stakes were a lot more different in the second film, because Moore really had a chance to sort of, given the story, you know, that Scaramanga was after Bond. He was after James Bond. So therefore, Moore had a chance to really flex his acting muscles, so he could sort of portray a sense of fear, but a sense of foreboding. Like he really wanted to find out what was going on. And the movie was great, and he was great in it. You know, there are some great moments here, and you know, the one-liners are actually kind of funny. I mean, okay, some of them are meh. I like Knick Knack, he's a cool henchman. I mean, if you want to hear my full thoughts on the movies, I have reviewed them all, so do check them out. But in terms of Roger Moore, did he get better in the second one? I guess so. I mean, if there were any improvements, there weren't any major ones. Mainly just the fact that he was a bit more intense this time round. Much the same with The Spy Who Loved Me. This was Roger Moore's best performance, undoubtedly. He just really found himself in the role. He found his feet, and he really just came in. There's just more confidence this time round. The third time round, he's done it 2 movies already. This is the third movie where, you know, he's got it into his head. I'm James Bond. I'm going to prove it. And he proved it to everyone, you know. And him, you know, I mean, Barbara Bach was a bit wooden in terms of the acting, but in terms of her character, she was good, and she had good chemistry with Moore, minus a couple of parts where she was a bit wooden. I really liked that film. You know, apart from Barbara Bach's acting and the villain, it's a bloody masterpiece. It's a great film, and it's one of the best in the series, as well as Moore's best film. I mean, it's a shame that the villain isn't quite there. You know, Stromberg is just a bit bland, but I have a lot of respect for The Spy Who Loved Me, and Roger Moore's best, definitely Moore's best. And you know, that opening sequence, it proved just how great Bond is, as in terms of the series as well as the character. And then after that, things started to deteriorate. It was... Sorry about that, I was interrupted. I had to get my lunch. So, yeah, I was saying, I think it was Moonraker. I mean, I don't actually hate Moonraker, I actually quite like it a lot. It's fun. It's pretty much like a standard Bond film, just until the last half an hour. But, I don't know, I think that... I think they focused too much on trying to make Moonraker, like they tried to make it too funny, and it wasn't necessarily the best Bond film. It's great in terms of like the spectacle. It is kind of Star Wars-esque, but Moore's performance in Moonraker is solid. I mean, there's not much to say about it. It's solid. Some of the one-liners can be some of the one-liners can be a bit pointless, like where's Drax? Oh, he had to fly. I mean, seriously, that's just not. It's not necessary. I mean, I don't actually hate Moonraker. Some of the one-liners were a bit too much. I mean, Jack McCullough might disagree, but no, Moore manages to maintain the style of his Bond, and you know, that's remains consistent through the 7 films, as I've said. I mean, there isn't really a moment when I thought this guy was crap. He's not crap, he's actually quite good. I mean, if you don't like the film Moonraker, I can understand that, but I do admire it for taking big risks, and Roger Moore had been settled into the role, and I think people thought, okay, I'm going to get used to this guy now. He'd been there for 3 movies already. This is his 4th movie. So, yeah. I do apologise. For Your Eyes Only, it's probably the weakest. Not going to lie. I mean, I thought about it. It's either A View to a Kill or For Your Eyes Only, but you know, I thought about it then. For Your Eyes Only just has so many forgettable moments. It's just such a forgettable film. I mean, it's not terrible, but it ain't fantastic either. Moore's performance, it's okay, I guess. I mean, it's sort of just doing the same thing as he's done 4 times previously. Oh, but that film, oh baby, my god. The villains were terrible. BB was awful. Just annoying. Action scenes were good. Moore was pretty good. I mean, he wasn't remotely fantastic, but there were some great moments, like the scene when I can't remember exactly what happens, but I think he kicks a car off the cliff. That's probably his darkest moment, like in terms of his how intense he is. Like he is sort of intense. Yeah, but no, he's good in For Your Eyes Only. I do think though this probably should have been his last one, or at least Octopussy. Speaking of which, Octopussy was a great one. I mean, it was fun. It was good fun. The story was very basic, but I liked it. Thought it was a bit too long though. It went on for a while. It was great to see different locations this time. I mean, and Moore was great, and there's that poker scene. He's really good in that. I just love how, you know, Moore maintains the sort of this English gentleman style. He's very kind of like sophisticated, but he's also quite tough, and well, when he wants to be, he's quite tough, but he's also quite of a flirt, you know, a bit of a ladies' man. But so it's interesting how Moore kind of portrays that. I don't think he's my favourite, but I do like him. I mean, Octopussy is just a fun adventure, nothing more. When he dresses up as a clown, but still, it's great to see him in another film, and that train fight was quite good. Just all of the action was great. I mean, even more interacting with Maud Adams again, because she played Andrea in Man with the Golden Gun. Now to see her play Octopussy, she was great. I really liked her. I think she's great. Yeah, Octopussy is a fun film. I'm not going to go too in depth into the films. I want to try and keep it about Roger Moore. But yeah, just as I said, watch the reviews if you want to hear more. And of course, what more reflection would be complete without mentioning A View to a Kill? Now, this is the most controversial Bond film of the Moore era, I think, because a lot of people hate this, and some people like it. Some people, a few selection of people, love it. I know Jack McCullough loves it. Now, I am sort of in the middle. I like it, but I don't think it's fantastic. I think this is a good, fun film. I mean, yes, the plot is slightly ripped off of Goldfinger, but it's not like, it's not exactly the same plot. So, you know, I just never really cared for Max Zorin. I didn't think he was a great villain. I mean, he was okay. I mean, he's not terrible. I just don't think he's that good. He just sort of plays himself. Mayday. There are some weird scenes in this film. You can't deny this movie is weird. And Moore is looking slightly old from his facelift. I mean, okay, you get away with it in Octopussy because, you know, that was, you know, because he did. He got away with it in Octopussy. You know, they managed to get away with it. But here, it looks a bit obvious, and I'm not going to lie, Moore is too old for this. I mean, I do like Roger Moore's Bond, but I mean, I know Jack McCullough's going to disagree with me, but I think Timothy Dalton should have been in this film. So, imagine though, it would have been weird if Dalton was in that scene with Bond and Maiden when he's like, "Got to take care of you, personally." That would have been how he would have said it. Oh, sorry. Anyway, but, you know, Roger Moore, he did contribute a lot to the series. You know, he stayed for 12 years, in 7 films, over 12 years. He's a great Bond, and, you know, he gets very overlooked and underrated, in my opinion. I think that his first 3 movies are his best. You know, he started off very good in the first 3 when he was trying to find his feet, and he pretty much maintained that performance throughout the last 4 of his films, whilst the quality of the films themselves didn't necessarily meet the standards of the other 3. I still think Moore kept them going, despite a few annoying one-liners. I don't mind some of them, it's just a few that are like, oh, really? I mean, not even lines that aren't from Roger Moore. Like, one line from Blofeld is like, "I'll buy you a delicatessen in stainless steel." What? What if you're just throwing that in there for a cheap laugh? No, it doesn't work. I can understand, you know, something's been put there for pure enjoyment, but that's just unnecessary. Oh, God. Anyway, no. I really like Roger Moore. I think he gets quite overlooked as Bond. So yeah, that's all I have to say on Roger Moore. I can't think of anything else. He did very well for what he had, and yeah, I'm sure he's proud of being in James Bond. Yes. So, Jack McCullough, here's your shot.
Thank you, MrTardis11. And now we come on to who I think is the greatest Bond in the franchise, Roger Moore. Roger Moore as James Bond 007 in Live and Let Die. Live and Let Die is a masterpiece. After Diamonds Are Forever, which I like, but a lot of people found lackluster and a real disappointment after On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which was one of the best in the series, we have Live and Let Die, which is just such a return to form. This film is just so good in executing everything it wants to do. It does it all perfectly, and it is down to Roger Moore and the supporting cast. This film starts off a great pre-title sequence. We have this funeral, and there's a passerby in Harlem, and he's just like, whose funeral is it? And the guy takes out a knife and he's like, yours, and gets picked up by the coffin, and then he start playing a jazz tune, and then we have we cut to the Caribbean where this guy's been bitten by a snake by Baron Samedi, and then we have the song Live and Let Die by Paul McCartney, which is one of the best Bond songs of all time. And yeah, it's just a great introduction to this film. And then after that we have Roger Moore's introduction. He doesn't have the greatest introduction of all James Bonds. It's not the weakest, but it isn't one of the best. But it's a solid introduction. But as soon as I see Roger Moore on screen, I am bought. I am sold that he is James Bond. I mean, you got to realise, in Diamonds Are Forever, even though Sean Connery was only 42, he looked so much older than he was. He had really grey hair. He was quite you know, he was a bit porky, you know. He put on a bit of weight. He just put on a bit of weight. He was a lot greyer. And then we have Roger Moore, who just looks completely, you know, great in the role. I mean, Roger Moore was 3 years older than Sean Connery in this film, and he looks great. He looks so much better than Connery in Diamonds Are Forever. And Moore did a lot of work for this film. He cut his hair short, lost a lot of weight, and he looks brilliant in this film. Really young, a lot younger than he looks, and it is just a brilliant introduction. We have M coming along, played by Bernard Lee. We have you know, Bond trying to hide the girl from M. We have Moneypenny sort of helping him, and we get this magnetic watch, and one of the best one-liners ever. Yeah, she's in the suit, and Roger Moore pulls down the metal zip. You know, sheer magnetism, darling. You know, just a great one-liner to start off a great film. And then we have the introduction of Mr. Big and Dr. Kananga. You know, just one of the best, one of the most underrated James Bond villains, I think, in the entire franchise. Played by Yaphet Kotto. He is just so scary and sinister in his role as Dr. Kananga. Really is one of the most underrated Bond villains of all time. And we also have Teehee, another great Bond henchman with a metal hook. And just the casting of this film is just excellent. We have Jane Seymour as Solitaire, who's one of the best Bond girls. She's brilliant. Yeah, as I said, we have Dr. Kananga, Felix Leiter, the first Felix Leiter to return for a second time in License to Kill 16 years later. And it's just an excellent cast, and Dr. Kananga is just so threatening. And I just love the whole tone of this film as well, the sort of voodoo feel that we have. It's just sort of a creepy mysticism, and Baron Samedi is just so threatening in this film. And yes, as I said, Dr. Kananga, just such a scary villain. You know, we have him dominating Solitaire. You know, he's just, he's just so ruthless with her. You know, your mother stepped out of line. You better not this time. You know, he's just you could tell he's just so threatening and just so evil in the role, and you really get you get it across that he is a bad guy and he is really a match for Bond. And we have Jane Seymour, as I said, and we have a great, you know, a great introduction where Bond's like Black Card and the White King, Miss, and you know, one of the greatest deliverances of the line, "My name is Bond, James Bond." Just a fantastic deliverance of the line, the best deliverance of the line I think since the first deliverance of the line way back in Doctor No. And you know, you could tell Roger Moore just fits in the role perfectly. And what he's wearing as well, the sort of cashmere, really brings out the English gentleman in him, and is just a fantastic film, Live and Let Die. Sheriff J.W. Pepper, who's really funny. We have one of the best, probably the best boat scene in the entire film, and the showdown. And the whole, it's just such a break. It's just so fresh and original. The whole drug, you know, he's going to give them drugs and then they'll be so addicted he'll start selling it to him, you know. Great, you know, just a great, fantastic introduction of Roger Moore. And as I say, Roger Moore is just Bond for me. He is just Bond. I mean, I know Red Skull brought up that he thought George Lazenby was better in On Her Majesty's Secret Service because he played it like Connery. I disagree. I think Roger Moore is just so much better. And I like that Roger Moore is trying to make a difference from the shaky camera there. I love the way that Roger Moore is just trying to make a difference. He's trying to be different from Connery, and that's a good thing, honestly. If Roger Moore just copied Connery, then I think the films would have died early. We wouldn't have had the film franchise going on for this long. And Lazenby just, you know, copying Connery just doesn't really help, to be honest. You should be original in your own take of Bond, and I think Moore brings across more of the English gentleman we got in the books. He sort of goes back and brings in the English gentleman, which we didn't have with Connery. Went back to the books and brought that in, which I think is good. And I think if Moore didn't do that, if he just played like Sean Connery, the films would have died an early death. And I think we have a real debt for Roger Moore on that. And it's nice that he's trying to be different and he's not trying to be tough. And he looks better. He looks like Bond. He looks better in the suit. He looks more like a gentleman, and it is a great introduction. Yeah, so on to The Man with the Golden Gun. Not as good as Live and Let Die, but still a great film. We have Scaramanga, played by Christopher Lee, one of the best villains in the series, and rightfully so. It's just a great film. Not as good as Live and Let Die, but still an excellent film. It's still great. The scene at the funhouse is excellent. And, you know, a lot of people complain about Moore, oh, he wasn't tough enough. He had some really good scenes where he's tough. The scene where he's slapping around Andrea Scaramanga's girlfriend, and the bit where he's aiming, he's like, I'm now aiming precisely at your groin. You know, just great, you know, great scenes. And then we have The Spy Who Loved Me. The Spy Who Loved Me, undoubtedly, is one of the best Bond films in the entire series. And I think everyone agrees on that. This film just starts off beautifully. We have a nice pre-title sequence, one of the best, I think. And I think a lot of other Bond fans would agree, where Bond is skiing. He skis. He's being chased by these Russian, by these Russian bad guys, and then he jumps off the cliff, and there's just a continuous shot of him jumping off the cliff, and then we have the Union Jack, and then the Bond theme, and then we have the beautiful song Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon. What a beautiful song. My favourite Bond song in the entire series. And the title sequence is probably the best as well, by Morris Binder. Probably the best Bond title sequence of them all. The, you know, Roger Moore sort of jumping and sort of, you know, it's the first time that Bond is shown in the title sequence apart from Goldfinger, which is just footage. It's just, you know, Bond is shot for that. And it's just an excellent title sequence, and the film is just brilliant as well. We have Barbara Bach, probably the sexiest Bond girl, you know, not the best actor, but a very sexy Bond girl. We have Roger Moore finally You know, he's in the role. He knows what he's doing, and he's just brilliant. And you know, the one-liners, he delivers the one-liners so well. You know, the scene where like the oil slick and the feathers on the guy's bike, and he crashes off the mountain. He's like, all those feathers, and he still can't fly. You know, Roger Moore has some great one-liners. He delivers them the best with that dry wit. You know, he always had an inflated opinion of himself. Heartbroken, Mr. Drax. Where's Drax? Oh, he had to fly. You know, just great one-liners. Really the best at delivering them. And his one-liners don't get boring at all. And A Spy Loved Me is just a great film. Some great stunts. We have the Lotus Esprit, which is a great, probably the best, one of the best Bond cars next to the Aston Martin. One of the great scenes where it changes into a submarine. We have the whole idea of Atlantis, you know, building a perfect world. And we have Jaws, one of the best Bond villains. And we go to Egypt, you know, just so many great scenes. And Roger Moore, you know, the bit where he's like hanging on his tie, he's like, where's Feckish? Pyramids! Ah! What a delightful chap. You know, he's just so dry and witty, and he's just brilliant. And Spy Who Loved Me is just an excellent film. Some really great stunts, a great plot, just a really good Bond film, one of the best of all time. And then we come to Moonraker, which is a step down. I mean, it's sort of copying The Spy Who Loved Me. It's sort of a copy of Star Wars. It's sort of a response to Star Wars. It's sort of the same, but it's still a good film. I mean, it's probably the campiest of the 70s. This and Diamonds Are Forever. But, you know, Roger Moore has some great one-liners again. You know, the scene, Hugo Drax. I mean, Hugo Drax, another great Bond villain. Very underrated, very dry. You know, you missed Mr. Bond. Did I? You know, great scenes. And it's a really good film as well. And Hugo Drax, if you swapped Hugo Drax for Carl Stromberg in Spy Loved Me, that would have probably been the best Bond film ever. And, you know, it's just such a great Bond film, Moonraker. I mean, it's sort of okay, it's not as good as Spy Loved Me, but it's still a good film. And Lois Chiles is Dr. Goodhead is brilliant. Another, I think she's better than Barbara Bach in The Spy Loved Me. A great, you know, independent woman working for the CIA, and just, you know, great, one of the best Bond girls. And it's it's a great end for Moonraker in the 70s. And then we have For Your Eyes Only, which is not a very good film at all. Just feels like a Connery film. There's not much to say. I mean, Moore does change his role, but it's, you know, change his performance, but it's not a very good film, very forgettable. I don't see why a lot of people like it. It just feels like a Connery film, not very good for me. But, you know, we have a good scene where he kicks a car off the cliff, which is a badass, brilliant scene. But yeah, and then we have Octopussy, one of the most rewatchable Bond films of all time. Just an absolute masterpiece, Octopussy. Just such a fun, entertaining film. Really witty. We have the return of Maud Adams as Octopussy. Just a great fun film. And then A View to a Kill, which is one of the most underrated Bond films of all time. Probably the best send-off for Roger Moore. It really is underrated. You know, we have a really great villain, Max Zorin, played by Christopher Walken. Roger Moore isn't too old. I mean, people say Roger Moore got like too old in A View to Kill. Have they seen Sean Connery? Never Say Never Again. You know, he had to wear a toupee for God's sake. I mean, he looked like a gorilla in that film. I mean, God, but yeah, View to a Kill is a great send-off, great fight in the Golden Gate Bridge, great stunts, just a really good film as well. The plot is very original, Mayday. You know, it's just one of the best send-offs for Bond, really enjoyable film. And yeah, you know, that's Roger Moore era, 7 films. In my opinion, they're all masterpieces. Well, you know, except for one. But, you know, Roger Moore for me is just Bond. He is just the personification of Bond for me. When I think of 007, I think of Roger Moore. And I just love that he brought back, he went to the novel, well, he didn't really go to the novels in certain terms of the humour, but, you know, the English gentleman, and he looked a lot better than Sean Connery, I have to say. Sean Connery had to wear a wig and Never Say Never Again. And he was just such a great Bond. He brought that dry wit, and he just has such a great expression and so many great one-liners. He has the best Bond villains, Kananga, Scaramanga, Hugo Drax, Max Zorin, you know, the best Bond girls, best themes. And his films for me are just timeless, just classics, and I love them all. And I will always love Roger Moore. The best Bond for me, he just is Bond. He has the look of Bond, he has the voice, he has the English gentleman. He just looks good. I mean, Sean Connery, yeah, I said, yeah, I like him, but, you know, compared to Roger Moore for me, he's not as good, you know. Roger Moore brings back that English gentleman, and he looks good in a suit. He looks better than Connery. His films are excellent, and View to Kill is very underrated, a very good send-off. And yeah, that's Roger Moore, my favourite Bond. And yeah, back to you, MrTardis11.
Thanks very much, Jack, for that very entertaining segment of this video. And thank you guys for watching, because, you know, it's always nice that you appreciate these videos and you enjoy watching them. Otherwise, why would I make them? Yeah, so next time we will be me and Jack McCullough will be reflecting on the fourth actor to play James Bond, Timothy Dalton, who only did 2 films, so that might be a shorter video. But yeah, no, thank you all for watching, and as always, I'm MrTardis11. See ya.